Hi friends, my name is Olga. I run Applet Studio. It's a small web design company. I also sell Squarespace templates and courses for web designers. So in this lecture, I wanted to chat with you about Squarespace's design system and specifically how to recreate it in Figma, why this is so important. So in Figma, you can design freely. There are no constraints. You can do whatever you want. And here's the problem a lot of designers face. So you design something in Figma and it's not translatable to Squarespace. You give it to a developer and they cannot recreate it. So each time you're trying to reinvent the wheel, you're trying to code it in Squarespace, and I feel like the overly coded Squarespace websites are not so good for the end customer, for the people who are going to be managing that site. They're often not developers, they're just users. So we are trying to make it as lean as possible for them. But in order to go through the proper design process, we design in Figma. We design mockups, we present these mockups to a client, and we agree on a certain design decisions with them before we start developing. So there is a problem that you can do anything in Figma, but in Squarespace you have certain constraints. So how do we work around those constraints? How do we understand the design system Squarespace has so that we can recreate it in Figma and make our process more effective, more efficient, and create great product for the end customer? The design system usually consists of the grid, the composition part. By the way, I have a really good lecture about layout grids and how to set them up in Figma. So they recreate the exact layout grid Squarespace is using. You can download this lecture below. Color options, we have typography options, and we have components. So all of these things can be set up in Figma, recreated in Figma. I always like to look at the default Squarespace templates to get a sense of what Squarespace wants us to use certain elements for, and I get a lot of layout ideas there. So let's take a look and examine and see how we can recreate these things in Figma. When you look at the default templates, you are really looking at the design library of possibilities and how Squarespace designers envisioned the way we use all of these design features and how they want us to overlap blocks, how they want us to present the images, present the summary blocks. So really, let's take one of these designs and add more components, add more style features, add more design blocks, and recreate those things in Figma. So as you can see, under styles, if you go to styles, you will see pretty much the components that Squarespace gives us, but these are not all of the components. So let's say heading, fonts, typography is a part of the design system, colors the part of the design system, buttons, a huge part of the design system, forms, miscellaneous, animations. We're not going to be looking at animations. Spacing. Spacing is the margin of the site, the page width and the site margin, this thing right here. But a lot of the components are actually hidden. And if you add a section, you will see, let's add a blank section. A lot of the components are blocks. So how the video looks a certain way, how a newsletter block looks, shapes, accordion blocks, and their design features. Summary block is a huge one. Galleries. All of these things, they look a certain way in Squarespace. So in order to recreate them in Figma, you need to know really well how they look in Squarespace in the first place. And then you can push the boundaries, redesign them with CSS, and just have more control over the design process that you're having. Let's add some buttons. This is a primary button. This is a secondary button, which looks exactly the same. And this button right here, let me change the color. So the section controls are also a huge part of the design system. There's a certain way. If I press G on my keyboard, it's going to show me the layout grid. And I also have control of the layout grid. For example, I can remove the gap. I can make the gap bigger. And the components, the elements on the page interact with this grid. Usually I start with a frame that is a standard size, a desktop size frame, and I add these layout grids. And they're not entirely exact as in Figma, but they just simplify my workflow. So I add 12 columns. It's my habit from working with Squarespace 7.1 classic editor before the Fluid Engine when it was introduced. So for Fluid Engine, I would do 24 columns with a smaller gutter, with a gutter of 11 actually. Why 11? Because if we go here and look at this section controls, the gap between these blocks is 11, but we can change it. So we can increase it to 20. It's going to look like this. But usually I ignore the gap. Let's go back here and go to size styles. So the first thing that I like to do is set up the colors. And I'm just repeating what I have here. In your case, you would be doing this in Figma first and then moving it back to Squarespace. But we're doing it backwards. So I'm going to have multiple colors. So I'll save those into style, into color component. So apply style. So I'm just gonna use a color picker to pick them. Color picker, picking them with a color picker, and I'm gonna save them into my styles. I'll create all of these styles. You can also name them if you want. Usually when I'm working on something really quickly, I don't create styles, but if I'm documenting the file for the developer that I'm working with, then I will document all of the styles in here. So I have color styles, right? And then I'm gonna press Ctrl G to deactivate the layout guides for myself. So then let's build the hero screen. I think I should have these. Let's take a screenshot. Image. Let's take the screenshot. So now I have my colors. See, now I can reuse them. Going back here, let's copy this image. Oops. Copy image, paste it here. Copy image in a new tab. Now the layout grids come in handy because I know that this image is somewhere in the middle. Let me look at this. Somewhere in the middle, and this one is between the 3 lines, the 3 columns. So this goes to the middle. And this one goes here. And then we're gonna do the headlines and the header too. Let's give it some name. Okay, what's the name of this template? Template name. About courses, gallery, and contact. Okay. About courses, gallery, and contact. Okay, let's lock this layer, lock this rectangle. I'm usually not renaming any of the layers if I don't intend to give this file to somebody else and I just intend to use it myself. Okay, let's look at the fonts. Active grotesque. I don't think I have active grotesque, but I have inter. Let's use inter for paragraphs. In the assign styles, you can look up the site title font and the site navigation font. So instead of active grotesque, let's use inter. Very similar. Look very similar to each other. And this is in the assign styles. We see site navigation size is 1 rem, which means it's 16 pixels. So base size 16 pixels. This is a reference to rem. So let's do this. 16 uppercase. Contact. Okay. Hard courses gallery. Uppercase 16. We're gonna tidy them up, align them like so, and group them and put them right in the middle. We have login. We can recreate the social links, but let's not do that. Let's just put a button here at the header. So let's delete those and put a button. Contact me. And let's switch up the button style. So the header button is tricky. It's getting the style for the core button, for the primary button, but it's only doing it like the whole button, but not the font. So each time I have to go back and I have to fix the header button to use the proper font, which is Enter in our case. It's enter, it needs to be uppercase, and it needs to be smaller, and no letter spacing. So the button is actually a component. Let me create this button. I already have my colors saved, so then I have to look for the color. And I'm gonna reuse one of these to create a button. Now, what you can do, you can save the button, group it, and turn it into a component. You can create a component, group to, let's rename it to primary button header. And now let's save this typography style as a primary, as a header, a nav. Header, nav. And this style as a button. So when we go here, typography, button. So see, we have text styles. We have a new text style button. And we're gonna save the same thing into header nav, but we know that they're the same. Header nav. And then look, let's add the headline. Makeup for humans. Makeup for humans. And this is Adobe Garamond Pro. I don't have Adobe Garamond on my machine. I'm just gonna use Garamond. It's not uppercase, it's lowercase. Makeup for humans, not regular. It's probably medium or even semi-bold. Centered. And even bigger than this. And a button. I'm just gonna duplicate this button right here. Template name is gonna be Garamond as well. Lowercase. Let's detach instance. And we see that this button is much bigger. It says explore courses. Explore courses. Putting it at the center. This is our primary button, create component. It's gonna be our primary button header, not primary button header, but just primary button. Okay, now we can take this whole section that we just created and save it as a component as well. But this section is created in like free flow. We're just drawing in this canvas of the grids, right? But what if we do something like a button or a form or a summary block with its standard features? So now we can save it as a hero and save it as a component too. Create component. Now, if you go to assets, you can see the library of these components. We have a primary button, we have primary button header, we have hero, and this is the way in which you can document all of the elements, all of the standard elements that you're encountering. Let's say summary blocks, list sections, buttons, even typography options, headers, menus. Everything that you can see can be turned into such components and reused across your files and across your Figma ecosystem. I'll give you a more practical example of how this works, both in Figma and in Squarespace. So I have this template, it's called Fidelity, it's really versatile, and I have multiple stylings of the summary blocks. So this is a summary block. A summary block is in Squarespace is a component, an element that is taking the blog posts from any blog collection and displaying them anywhere on the site. And the summary block is really versatile. People use it for testimonial blogs. People use it to present different information in using blog collection as a source for content. The template is for nonprofits. And let's say this nonprofit wants to highlight an article on their homepage. One article or multiple articles. So we're styling the summary blocks in this particular way. And on this template, we have an elements page with a whole bunch of elements and different ways in which we can showcase blog posts, different layouts. So this one is a layout. This is another one, another one, another one. And in Figma, this looks like this. So let's say I wanted to restyle this template for my customer. It's really easy for me to do because I have all of this done in Figma already and it's recreated exactly in Squarespace. And I can take this instance, group it, and save it as a component. Create component. You can create component out of this. I'll group it first. Create component. Then I'm gonna see that in my library here, and I can reuse these components however I want, and it's really easy and fast for me to do. Thank you guys, I hope this was helpful. Again, my name is Olga, I run Applet Studio, it's a Squarespace template shop. As a part of this bundle, I'm giving you a vanilla template along with a development tutorial. And also you can download a freebie, download a sample Figma file with components and styles documented as if it was in Squarespace. Let me know if you have any questions and feel free to reach out to me on Instagram. Bye!